Hello and welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne and these are my weekly wonderings and wanderings. Today, I'm wandering into a library book sale. I know, you're all so surprised. I don't ever do this. I've only done it like every week in my past 2-3 weekly vlogs, but you know, we're not gonna talk about that. But this library book sale is like, you know, like the big seasonal one at a library I don't normally go to. So, and I literally have like 20 minutes in my day today to go quick browse through what they have and see if there's anything that I want to grab before I have to go home, because we've got things going on today. Not the least of which is my son's 17th birthday. Here we are. It's actually next week, but we're celebrating it with family today. So I gotta go home and finish getting ready for that and all that stuff. But I have a few minutes, so I'm gonna go pop into this library book sale and see what I can find. I finished at the sale, and there were a lot of books that I was like, oh wow, that's a good book, that's a good copy. I've heard a lot of good things about that, or I love that book when I was a kid and I read it and I didn't have one. And I considered so many books, but I left most of them there, which is a good thing because one, I don't have space for books, and two, they were pricier than usual, like $3 for hardbacks and $2 for paperbacks. Usually around here, it's $2 for hardbacks and $1 for paperbacks. At these library book sales, they were a little bit above the curve on that, but I did pick up a couple of things. I got Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, which is on my 50 by 50 list. So now I have a copy and I can read it anytime I want. I got these vintage copies of these George MacDonald books, who is an author that I want to read because he's so influential. He was so influential with like C.S. Lewis, for example. And I think also this would fit for Booktober, the fantasy prompt. So there's this, I mean, look at this crazy cover. This is the Light Princess and Other Fantasy Stories. I do not know what is going on there, but anyway. And then we have at the back of the North Wind, more people flying through the air, but that's a little bit less scandalous there. Anyway, so I thought these vintage copies were really kind of cute, but also now I have them so I can read them. I don't know that I'll have time to get to them this October, and they're definitely not on my TBR at the moment, but I do want to read them eventually. And then a lot of people have talked about Romanov by Nadine, and I've heard some people love it, some people not as much, but it's missing the dust jacket, but it's a nice hardback copy. So I want to try it. It's probably not one that I'm going to keep, but those are people in history that interest me, and the kind of, I think there's an element of like magical realism or alternative history in that YA version of their story. So I'm curious about it. This one, I'm not sure that I will keep or not. I'm going to try. So see how it has these library stickers. I'm going to see if I can get those off. If I can, this will be a much better copy than what I have. And Hans Brinker is a book from my childhood that I really loved, and I didn't have a good copy of it. Now, the inside front cover, it's a library book, but I love the hardback. I love the illustration on the front cover. And then if you turn a couple pages, then we have this really beautiful painting on the inside, this illustration. So I love that. And then more full color illustrations. So if I can get that tape off the front, that library tape, that will be better than what I will like that copy, that vintage copy. And then I'm going to add this to my Christmas book collection. This is a nice hardcover copy of The Gift of the Magi and 5 Other Stories by O. Henry. And it's from a high school library. It's a discard. Looks like a vintage, maybe 60s perhaps, 1967 edition. And it has these drawings in them periodically. And it's a nice hardcover. So, and then just for funsies, I got these vintage Regency romance because I don't recognize the author Joan Smith, but I recognize the cover design. I guess it's Fawcett Crest Regency romance. I have read another author, Patricia Varian, who published in this line of Regency romances, and I liked her books. And they're clean and everything. I have no idea if these are or not. I don't know if they're worth reading or not. No idea. But I saw them and it just like rang a nostalgic bell for me because the design of the cover was so familiar. And so I was like, oh, I'll try those. It's been a long time since I've just read, a random Regency romance just for the fun of it. So I picked those up and we'll see. Now I have to get going back to my house, and my time is up for dilly-dallying, and I will see you another time. Bye. is, what is it? Monday evening. It's Monday evening. And I'm just wondering, do you ever feel like you have to have a certain amount of productivity before you will allow yourself to sit down and relax with a book? Because during the week, I definitely feel like that. And so I measure up all my productivity for the day and weigh it up against spending a good hour or two just trying to finish this book. More on that in a second. And weighing it in the balance. I went to work. I had choir club after work, which is an extracurricular activity. Drove my son to his job. Went grocery shopping. Came home. Made dinner. Did our budget for October. Paid all the bills. I did take a little nap in there because I was a little tired. Threw some parenting in there. And now it's almost 9:30. And I want to spend, well, the truth is I want to take as long as it takes to finish this book. And there's still a little part of me that's guilty, yeah, but there are other things that you could do. The house isn't completely clean. I mean, let's be real. When is it ever? And, there's other work and tasks that you could do. I'm just going to finish the book. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. But let me tell you what, first of all, I am more than halfway through. There's 30% left. Last night I had gotten about that far and I was kept asking myself, where is the Christian part of this book? Because it's Ravel, which typically is pretty solid in terms of faith content. It's not even that there's no mention of typical faith elements, because that's not necessarily the benchmark for me as to whether or not a book, is Christian. There's just nothing so far that is redemptive or good or true or beautiful about the story. So we have two timelines. In the one timeline, the main girl, she's not really at peace with herself or her situation. She's in her mid-40s. She's taking care of her mom who's schizophrenic. She's taking the full responsibility of that. And that's very stressful. Her mom is occasionally suicidal and deals with mental health episodes, and can be a recluse at times. And the daughter's trying to keep their family art museum afloat, and she's trying to keep her mom afloat. And, she's lost her own sense of self in the process, etc. But it's all very bleak. And she has these questions and these struggles. And I'm sitting here thinking that Christianity gives hope and purpose and reason in these struggles, but there was no mention of that. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a Bible verse. It doesn't have to be, she went to church and she heard this sermon. It could be built into the story, creating that hope, giving a vision for, a hope and purpose and all of these things. But it's not there. It's just absent. And then on top of that, she is in this fledgling relationship with, she's in her mid-40s with someone who's at least in his mid-60s and was her college professor. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with that. That part, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just a little bit weird, especially because I'm okay, this college professor is seeking her out now. Now there is a tentative connection outside of potential, just romantic interest based on their art connections. So I guess it's possible that he sought her out, not just because he remembered her from when he had her as a student, but he very, very clearly remembered every interaction they had. That's just a little weird. Okay. I'm sorry. That's just weird. And then in the historic timeline, there is also a strange relationship where this amateur artist, female artist, and it's interesting how she gets thrown into that, first of all. And her backstory is she fought as a man alongside her brother in a war in Europe that a particular war I don't really know much about, that conflict in the 1800s. And, something terrible happened. And so then she's basically in hiding, and then she ends up becoming a female artist. First of all of that is just a very far out, like really far out. I mean, I suppose all of that could happen in one person's life, but it's really like out there. And then she's traveling around under the protection of a man who at first she refused, but then she agreed to because she got desperate with her circumstances. But then she found out that he was married, but he married someone who the woman that he married convinced him to marry her because she said she was pregnant with his child, but it wasn't really his, it was someone else's. So she was basically, and he was, the male version of, and so they ended up getting married. And so like, okay, they're not really great people, but our main female character is like under his protection and following him around the world, literally, as he's a merchant for paints. And there's nobody good in that storyline. Like the main character, she's not bad, but she's just kind of like drifting along and letting life happen to her and moaning and complaining all the time about how she doesn't have any agency, but she doesn't take charge at all. Like she doesn't, do things. I mean, she learns how to paint, and she meets these 3 women in Paris who are actual artists. And, they tell her about how they, became artists and, how they make it work or whatever. And she's all bemoaning like, how they all need a man and everything. And, okay, just, I don't know. I don't like it when the characters are just bemoaning their lot in life and then just letting it toss them around everywhere instead of getting up and doing something about it. Okay? Anyway, the plot is interesting, and I think it's going to be interesting how the 2 storylines connect with each other. But I went and I was looking to see if it was going to change, if there was going to be any sort of redemptive element, if I was going to finish this book and be like, okay, wow, I really like how all of that pulled together and came together, and it ended up being a fantastic story. That was my hope. But based on, even though a lot of people like the book, so don't, just because my response to it is not positive, doesn't mean that yours would be the same experience, because a lot of the reviews, including from people that I follow and have similar reading taste to, and I would recommend their reviews and everything, a lot of people really liked it. It's just not satisfying me. And I'm definitely judging it in the context of being published by a Christian publishing company and written by a Christian author and having very little goodness or truth or beauty to offer. Okay, there's a lot of discussion of beauty, but the actual, and talk about art and stuff and the beauty of art, and that's good. But in the actual storyline and the way things are coming, the way things are happening, so far I'm struggling to find the beauty in it. It just seems bleak and dismal and frustrating and tainted. It's not appealing to me at all. So therefore, my goal tonight is just to skim through the rest of it, just to see how everything comes together at the end, and just to make sure that it's not like, there's not some kind of sort of redeeming something in the end that pulls everything together in a way that it doesn't look like it's going to happen now. So that's where I stand with that one. I will update you perhaps tomorrow or whatever, my next clip. We'll let you know if I finished it tonight and what I thought about it. So that's what I'm going to go do, because I have been very productive today, and I earned myself the right to sit here and just finish reading this book. Okay. Hello. It's Tuesday evening. What time have we got here? 8:45. And is that all it is? No, it's 9:45. I was like, yeah, something's not right there. 9:45. Yeah. And so another long day is almost in the books. And I have finished up, doing some work just now. And I wanted to make a quick clip about this book.
Passing the Torch, An Apology for Classical Christian Education by Louis Marcos. And this is a book that I am reading for work. And we talked through the introduction in the first chapter today. I think we're planning on reading it throughout the course of the whole year. So it's not something that I'm going to be finishing up anytime soon. I'm just reading it mostly at work. But it is very interesting. It is primarily written to educators, but also anyone who raises children might find this of interest. And I think it is a valuable book. I've only read the introduction, which was very long, and part of the first chapter, but the introduction was very insightful, and it was talking about the makeup of a human and the different components of who we are and characteristics of being human. And I won't go into all of them. I'll just, list them from his headings. He says, we are noble, and then he has like a whole thing explaining what he means by each of those things. We are noble, we are depraved, so contrasting qualities, right? We are incarnational beings, we are dual beings, we are moral agents, we are habitual beings, we are sub-creators, we are builders, we are grown children, which was interesting. And this one is a funny way of putting it. We are political animals. I really appreciated that part of the essay, but what I wanted to point out was just to mention a quote from it that really struck me when I was reading through this. In the section about we are sub-creators, he begins by saying, thus far I have focused on man's moral, or the good, in part, the part of man that deals with what is good or what isn't good, and rational, so the reasoning part of man, or that equates to truth, what is true, what is not true. It is now time to turn to his aesthetic, or the beautiful, his aesthetic nature, and consider his supernatural metaphysical capacity for imagination and creativity. And then it talks about man is one who dreams and who converts his dreams into works of beauty and wonder. And there's some quotes from J.R. Tolkien in here about us being, sub-creators, which Tolkien is the one who coined that phrase. So we create because we are created, and we follow in the footsteps of our creator. And he says, as sub-creators, we follow in the footsteps of the creator, making on a smaller scale and with the potential for misuse, but in the same mode and in accordance with our original commissioning. But he goes on to talk about our imagination and our propensity for storytelling. And this quote, I love this quote. I'll just read this whole paragraph. The part that really struck me was at the end, but I'll read this whole paragraph. If Tolkien is right, and I believe he is, then our impulse both to tell old tales and to fashion new ones is tied to our essential, fundamental nature. We yearn to be weavers of stories, even as we know in our bones that we are part of the grander weave of an overarching story that is greater than ourselves. Some might argue that our belief that we are part of a story comes from the fact that we as a human race love to invent stories. But I would respond that the truth of the matter is exactly the opposite. I love this. We invent stories because we are conscious of being part of a story ourselves. I love that so much. And he goes on to talk about the importance of incorporating storytelling as an educator or the process of raising children. And we were talking about that a little bit in our staff meeting today. But I just love the thought that we love stories and we love creating stories because we know deep down inside that we are part of a much larger story. So just food for thought, something to ponder. I enjoyed that thought today. I finished reading the book, oh my goodness, The Lady with the Dark Hair. I finished reading this one and I was disappointed. I was ultimately disappointed. It did not improve from what I was picking up on yesterday. And I was trying to pinpoint exactly what it was that disappointed me in this book. And it's intrinsically tied to the fact that it is published by a Christian published company and written by a Christian and is therefore supposed to be a Christian book. And in the book, it's all about, and even if you read the Goodreads reviews, people pick up on this, like it's obvious. A primary theme here is identity. Our two main female characters are searching for their identity, they're trying to establish their identity. They're trying to figure out for themselves, who they really are, and they're trying to walk confidently in that person of who they are. And this is a really, really great opportunity for a Christian author telling a Christian story. And I'm not talking about saying, that they need to go to church and find Jesus in the story necessarily. I am just saying that identity is a profoundly Christian biblical concept. It's not something that, I guess from a Christian perspective, it is impossible to find your true identity outside of biblical Christianity. Our identity of who we are gives us purpose, gives us hope, gives us joy, gives meaning to life. Without a solid concept of our identity as created beings by a creator who designed us with a purpose, who designed us for relationship with him, without that framework, all search for identity is pointless. It's a dead end road. It's going to get you nowhere. And that's what I got. I said in my Goodreads review, I think ultimately it was very bleak because, for example, the historic female main character, she spends the whole story living under every name except for her own. She spends the first half of it, before we actually get to know her, her backstory is that she pretended to be a man to fight alongside her brother. And so she was living under a false identity at that point until that was discovered. And then she was also existing under a different identity in a different country. Again, an identity not her own, a name not her own, a backstory not her own. And because of something that had happened, and she was escaping the consequences of that. So she's living under a false identity. And then she leaves from that situation. And again, she's, living under a false name. She escapes from that through false pretenses and a false identity. And at the end of this story, she is going off. She's determined to, for the first time in her life, to use her real name to be who she is and to claim who she really is, to claim herself as a person and to be that person. And then you know what happens in the book? She disappears. She disappears from the pages. And the modern main character spends the whole book piecing together her backstory little by little, little by little by little by little. But she never learns anything about her after that. So when she's determined to find her real identity, and then she disappears. What kind of an ending is that? The whole theme of your book is about finding your identity. And then the main character finally decides to just be who she is, who she really is, and then she disappears from the pages of the book. Where is the hope in that? Where is the meaning in that? Where is the storytelling in that? What is the story trying to say? That if you become who you really are, that you're going to disappear? Is that the message I'm supposed to get from that? Okay. So I didn't love it. I gave it 2 stars. And primarily for that reason, because you have such a beautiful opportunity to tell a beautiful story. I mean, you can use the same character with the same life circumstances and the same dreams and goals and desires, but make it a really beautiful story about true identity and purpose and meaning. And it just fell apart. It just fell apart. And there was nothing truly meaningful. Now, this was my perspective on it. Many people really enjoyed the book. It has 4 stars on Goodreads, which is a really good rating. The 2 stars are minimal. I mean, there's only a couple of them. So the vast majority of people really enjoy. I mean, it's not like a huge book. I mean, it doesn't have huge numbers of ratings on it, but the people who have read it, by and large, have enjoyed it. So I don't want you to take my word for it. If it sounds like something that would be of interest to you, there's a lot of beautiful discussion of art, and there are some real artists who show up on these pages, which is fun. She used so many amazing words for color that I didn't even know existed, which was really cool. And you learn a little bit about the history of painting and the process of the creation of the actual paints. There's a lot to enjoy in this story. The writing is decent. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible. You know, the actual prose and the narrative style and the unfolding of the story, the plotting was pretty good. It was just thematically, I really struggled with it. And the pacing I found a little bit slow, and other people did mention that. A lot of people, if they took any issue with it, it primarily was in the pacing. They felt it to be pretty slow. So there is that. That is a commonly held complaint about it. So you may want to take that into consideration when thinking about whether or not you want to read it. But those are my thoughts. That was my personal response to it. I just felt like the author really just failed to deliver on some really strong potential that could have been there. And I was ultimately disappointed in that. So, all right, I am going to close out for now, despite the fact that I have not actually had a great deal of time this week. I've been crazy busy. I have somehow managed to film already probably 20 minutes worth or so. So I'm going to cut this short now. We'll see what else I managed to finish reading this week. My goal right now is to finish Persuasion. And then after that, I'll see what I pick up. So I'll probably be make another clip when I'm finished with that. Other than that, we'll see what we get up to this week. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hello, it is Friday evening. Happy Friday to me. I mean, it's Sunday when this is going on live, but right now I'm feeling the Friday. This morning, it was quite chilly. So I wore long sleeves and long pants, and I wore shoes with socks. Ever since May, I've been wearing sandals. I wear sandals all summer long. I hate it when my feet feel hot. I hate it. And so I don't wear the socks and shoes until it's absolutely necessary. And I was feeling the necessity this morning of socks and shoes. However, now the sun is high. It is hot. It's very warm. 74 degrees. So not like terrible, but enough that I'm feeling overdressed and overly warm. And so I got my favorite iced shaken espresso at Starbucks. I'm waiting for my younger son to finish his job. It's a very part-time-ish sort of job at our church and on the weekends. And then we're going to go and celebrate my older son's birthday by going out to eat at a local burger place. And then he requested crumble cookies for dessert. And that's what we have in store for us this evening. Tomorrow, we're going to go celebrate his birthday with my husband's family. And then my husband and I are going to go on a date night to see a play of Persuasion by Jane Austen at the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company in Baltimore. So I am very excited about that, but I will tell you all about that on my next weekly vlog because I will start that tomorrow. So sneak a peek at the events coming up. Anyway, for now, I am still finishing reading Persuasion, but really, really close. I only have a couple chapters left, so I'm definitely going to finish it by the time this is live. I'm going to have it finished by the time we go see the play. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it, of course. There are two things that I want to mention. First, I've already talked about this. I'm just really loving the subtlety in this book in particular. I mean, I've said this before. I've said this more than once, but all of Austen's works are marked by their subtlety and their attention to the very fine detail of the emotional life of people as shaped by regular circumstances rather than tragic, dramatic sort of circumstances. And I feel like in Persuasion, that's particularly true. I think one complaint that some people understandably have about Persuasion is that They don't see the developing relationship between Captain Wentworth and Anne. And I can understand where that complaint comes from. That makes sense. However, I do think it's in the subtlety of the little details and the little moments that she does explore between them. Also, the fact that they already had, like, their relationship already started. So this is a rekindling. It's not, you know, starting from scratch. And the feelings are already there. They're just buried by resentment and hurt and the fact that they haven't seen each other in 7 or 8 years. So Austen is very deftly and subtly weaving their lives back together again with very, very fine thread. And it's beautiful. And I don't know, I think it's the smallness of the details, it's the fineness of the storytelling that heightens the emotion for me. Because in those little experiences where Anne and Captain Wentworth, they have this minor exchange, this brief conversation, but it's so full of emotion on both sides. And Anne's side of the emotion, Austen details very explicitly. Frederick's side, she alludes to, we get glimpses of it through, looks on his face maybe, or a turn of speech, or anyway, it's a little bit more, okay, I should say maybe a little bit less obvious, but it's still there. So we can see both of them responding to and reacting to this scene, but it's not, there aren't any big moments, there aren't any grand gestures, there's no fanfare. It's just little tiny daily moments and interactions that just inexorably but very gently bring them back together again. And I really love it, really enjoying it. And so that's the one thing I want to mention. The other thing I want to mention is that something that has struck me this time in reading Jane Austen's books again, I'm realizing more strongly how very Christian Jane Austen was in her worldview. Now, by and large, the people in her circle were fairly Christian in their worldview, but I think Jane Austen was exceptionally so, being raised in her father's house, where her father was I believe he was a rector, right? I think that was his title. He was the actual pastor of the church. And he also was one who it wasn't just because that was his job. Like, it was important, it was meaningful to him. In that day and in that time, because of the way that the church was run, it was very possible to have someone being the leader of a church, the pastor of a church, who was just there because it paid their bills, it gave them money, and that's the only reason they were there. They didn't actually have any genuine religion, genuine faith in their own heart. They just perfunctorily fulfilled the role and the duties, or paid for someone else to fill it for them, which happened as well. But Jane Austen's father seems to have been more intentional. It seems to have been more of a meaningful position for him. I mean, I'm sure he did it because, it was a way for him to make money, to make a living for his family, but he also seemed to be genuinely involved in shepherding his flock and in his own faith and communicating it to his children and raising his children in it. Because all of his children seemed to have a strong faith to one extent or another. And I feel like Jane Austen's worldview is very, very Christian, but it's subtle. It's not in your face like anything else in her books. It's in the way her characters are portrayed. It's in the things that they say. It's in the things that they value, especially. You see her worldview coming through in that. And one reason why I'm noticing it more is because I'm reading the annotated versions, which have been very helpful. And one thing that I've noticed, it has been a pattern in every single book, is the use of the word seriously, or serious matters, or serious issues, serious thoughts, whatever. And what I'm learning through the annotations by David M. Shepard is, in that context, in the context in which that word is being used in Austen's novels, it's kind of a euphemism for religious matters. So when she's describing someone's character and is saying that they were I don't know the exact phraseology of it, and my book is in the trunk, so I don't want to get it out, but it's something along the lines of considered serious matters or was serious about whatever. It's just that word serious. It just means that they considered religion, like religion played into their life and their choices, and that they took their religion seriously. Maybe it means that they were, faithful church members, or I think it's more indicative though of a heart condition, like they were serious about the things that really matter, which is their faith. And certain characters are described in Austen's books as being serious or not, or someone like Wickham, a red flag when we meet him is the fact that he's not very serious about religious things. He's more flippant about that. And so it's a red flag about his character. And so the reason I mention that is because in Persuasion, Anne doesn't really like Mr. Elliot. And at first, it seemed like, Lady Russell is like, well, why not? He seems like the perfect guy. It's the perfect situation. He's going to be the heir to your father's house, so you can get back, the house that you love so much, Kellynch Hall, and you can be well provided for. And he's a nice guy. He's polite. He's civil. He comports himself well in company. He knows how to carry a conversation. He's charming. All of these things, like on the surface, Mr. Elliot seems like the perfect guy for Anne. But Anne always has, after her initial meeting, and initially she's impressed with him, but after a few conversations with him, she draws back because she's not actually very pleased with him. And when Austen begins to detail the reasons why Anne is not interested in Mr. Elliot, she spends actually the better portion of a fairly large paragraph discussing Mr. Elliot's attention to religious things, to Christian things. There's a whole paragraph that talks about how he doesn't take church seriously, like he doesn't mind traveling on Sunday, and that he doesn't mind skipping church, and all of these things that are related to a person's religious walk, their Christian life, and he doesn't take those things seriously. And so the implication is he's not a Christian. And so that is the primary reason Anne dislikes him, or not dislikes him, but because she actually likes him as a person until she finds out, things about him that he has hidden from the average person. When she finds out the truth about his real character, then she dislikes him for good reason. But up until that point, she likes him well enough as a person. She enjoys talking to him, but she will never be serious about him. She will never consider him as a marriage partner because he's not Christian. And that has really been sticking out to me. And I'm realizing it's more and more prominent than I had ever thought that it was in Austen's work. And it may be more so in some books than others. Some of her books are more strongly, come across more strongly, I guess, in their distinctly Christian perspective than others. But like Mansfield Park, for example. But I think it's always there. It's just because it's a part of Austen's worldview. It's the way that she sees things. She sees things from a very Christian perspective. And so that comes through in her narrative, in her stories. So I have just found that really interesting. I'm really enjoying Persuasion, and that will serve as my final review of it, even though I have not quite finished it yet. But we're gonna call it finished for now for the purposes of this video. By the time it goes live, it will be done. So, and I'm looking forward to getting started on my October reading. So my next video will be all about my Victober reads and other fun things that I have going on in October. I did want to mention before I sign off today that I have updated my Etsy shop. And in addition to the books that I have for the blind date books, which you can check those out, I have now added like the shirts and stuff that I did have on a fourth wall shop, but now I'm moving them all to Etsy, and so I can have everything in one place. So if I were like a really good marketing sort of person, I would like have the shirt or the mug or something to show you right now, but I'm not a good marketing person. I fly by the seat of my pants most of the time, so I was just working on this earlier today. It's fresh in my mind. Anyway, so the shirts, so far I have moved the shirts and a mug, and I'm by the time this video goes live, I hope to have a few more things moved over to my Etsy shop so that you can purchase them from there. They are different maybe I'll try to get some pictures up here. They're shirts with quotes from Pride and Prejudice and from The Princess Bride, and also a new one from Anne of Green Gables, and that one I really like. That's a fun one. So that is going up on my Etsy shop now, and I'm pretty soon, hopefully by the time this video is live, I'm such a mess, but hopefully I will have the mugs there also and some stickers hopefully as well. So you can check that out on my Etsy shop. I'll put the link in my description box, but it is also always in my YouTube profile. You can head on over there and see if there's anything that interests you. So that is my little commercial for today. This video is sponsored by Anne's Etsy shop. Okay. All right. So that is all I have for today. Let me know in your comments how your week has gone in terms of your reading and your life. If everything is going well, what is the weather like in your area? Because I'm curious. Here we're, definitely in that stage where we have chilly mornings and hot afternoons, and no matter what you wear, it's going to be wrong. You're going to have to change it at some point in the day. So that is our life. Let me know in the comments what yours is like, your weather in the area, and what you've been reading, what you want to read, what's on deck for you, how's your reading going, all of that stuff. Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.